Stefan wasn't at all sure of who else would find out about him or who else knew already. There was still the fact that Stefan still did not know the end result that his uncle wanted him to find. Concerning those matters, he didn't know where to begin. Sabaristan looked around once more, making sure they remained in the clear. They say Ned Stark has a tome that Lord Arryn requested days prior to his death. Could that be a part of your search of this truth you seek? He only told Selmy a good portion of what he was doing and what he found. It was because he needed Barristan and trusted him that he told him that much. Whatever this end result was, he wasn't sure if that could be shared with another soul. It brought Jon Arryn death and made his uncle leave King's Landing for what seems like for good. How could he bring another life in danger? He was already endangering his own. Possibly. He needed the trail I was on and he got it, now I need his. He needed that tome, and how else was he supposed to get it without confronting the Warden of the North? Cassandra. It pained her to watch her husband sit by the fire, face in his hands as he found solace in the quiet. It had been only a few days since Bran woke up, and while Robb was so happy, overjoyed actually, it was still devastating in the sense that his little brother wasn't the same. She only caught wind of the last bit of their conversation, where Bran thought himself better off dead. She had wanted to see the little lord for herself, to speak with him and know him just as she did with Rickon, but it was by accident she heard a personal conversation between brothers. The former princess wasn't sure what Robb really expected. His little brother was the adventurous sort, he loved to run and climb. When you take that and just take the ability to walk from anyone, most importantly from a child, it wasn't going to be an easy process. She wanted to comfort him and yet she didn't know how. What was she supposed to tell him? Her brothers weren't crippled for life. They weren't thrown and nearly killed. Her family had not dealt with such a thing, so all she could offer was sympathy. That she could imagine how they felt even if her imagination wasn't on the same par as their reality. Robb. Unable to allow him to suffer alone while simultaneously not wanting to pressure him, she knew it would be easier if he talked it out than bottled it in. You can talk to me. He didn't move or say a word, making her wonder if he was choosing to ignore her. Bunching her skirts in her hands to keep them from trembling due to her anxiety, she lowered her head almost weakly. What could she do? She kept thinking, trying to figure out the proper solution. What should a wife do? How does a wife comfort their husband? Would bedding him make him better? Her mother would say that was the wiser choice. His father sought women for that same reason, didn't he? His whoring was often prior to their marriage, but it became more frequent when the love of his life died. Her uncle Tyrion sought the comfort of women to rid himself of the pain of the love of his life too. She supposed all men lost themselves in efforts to forget what hurt them most between a woman's legs. The solace they would find was temporary, but effective. That's why they kept going back for more, like an addiction. I've failed him as a brother. She nearly jumped, startled by the sudden sound of Robb's voice. Her eyes immediately flicked up to look at him, watching him look at the floor so crestfallen. I failed him before and I failed him again. That's not true. There were many times where she felt inadequate as a sister for Stefan and Joffrey, of that she could relate to him with. Sometimes as a sibling, the best you can do is be there for them. It doesn't feel enough, but it is all your power will allow. With hesitant steps, she lessened the distance between them. You are a good brother, Robb. You did not fail him at all. You are simply doing the best that you can. Bran, at this time, is learning to adjust to this different way of life for him. And during this process, he needs you strong and to be how you always were with him. That look in his eyes didn't change. That overwhelming expression of hopelessness didn't just go away like she wished it would. Robb was only 7 and 10, the same as she, but he had looked like a little boy in his sadness. He barely looked like the lord he was. Due the strange height difference of them now, considering he was in a seat, she had knelt down properly to give him a simple gesture. One that she would have wanted if she were in his place. One that he did for her when she was afraid after the fire. She hugged him. It was almost instantly when she could feel every muscle in him relax. He began to bury his face in the crook of her neck, making the skin heat at the contact. The hairs of his beard tickled her, making her have to keep her laugh at bay from the feel of it. Her eyes gazed absently over his shoulder, her body too busy sinking into the warmth of his arms that circled her and kept her locked against him. It was such a simple gesture, and yet, she had hugged many people before, but none of them came close to Rob's hugs. It made her feel like his arms were a safe haven, like the kind of sanctuary that someone looks for in a September or in a Godswood. Even though she was the one who was supposed to be comforting him, Cassandra could hardly remember why there should be any reason for fear and sadness at the moment. All there was warmth, a warmth not even the sun used to give in King's Landing or the fire in a cold night. Rob was made of winter, so why did he feel like the summer to her? "Thank you," she heard him say very whisper-like, almost like he only wanted her to hear him despite them already being alone in the room they shared. Words she heard before, she knew, but hearing him say that made her feel giddy. That he was thanking her because he enjoyed what she had done for him. That what she did was so much enough that he wanted to express his gratitude. Rob could invoke many emotions in her, some she met before but with a different quality to it. They never reminded her of how she felt them before, they felt new and strange. "I was almost scared that this wasn't going to be enough," she openly admitted, feeling comfortable with sharing that minor fear. "Tommen likes stories and Joffrey likes for you to distract him." His hold had loosened, just enough for him to pull back enough to face her again. Her eyes quickly wanted to avert, not sure why she suddenly felt nervous looking at him now. His gaze, however, had her locked into place. "You mean to comfort me like you comfort your little brothers?" He sounded disappointed. Confused, she drew her brows together. "No." She finally understood why he would feel raw about it. "I mean that. I don't know how to comfort you because you're not my brother, you're my husband. I almost thought bedding you would make you feel better." That last bit was a slip of the tongue and she found herself feeling red in the face. Just why on earth would she had admit that? He was looking at her, that mischievous and roguish grin that he would wear whenever he felt like testing her with his jokes. This was embarrassing for her now and all she wanted to do was shield her face with the closest thing at hand. "I wouldn't object to that." Whether he was joking or being honest, she didn't know, but what she did know was that she couldn't feel more flustered than she already had. "We could still do that." "Shut up." Squeezing her eyes shut for a solid minute, she could hear him laughing so clearly in her ears. What was worse? Finding his laugh pleasant when he laughing at her expense or actually considering what he said. "Here I am trying to be a good wife and you tease me." It was a fight, to stand upright, and push herself away from Robb Stark. As soon as she stood, he immediately followed suit. "Good night." Robb allowed her one step. Just one before his rough hand, clasping her wrist, had pulled her right back towards him. Cassandra had no choice but to look up at him now, green eyes staring at his blue ones with uncertainty. She was unsure if she was enjoying this or she felt absolutely terrified that remnants of their wedding night began to play in her mind's eye. It was still so odd to her that she had been so bold that night. She knew her duty and she had done it without fault. She shook away all her own fears of being deflowered because sealing the marriage was expected of her. It was still her duty now as his wife to pleasure him, but she had avoided it for multiple reasons. Right now, it didn't feel as if he was demanding it. It felt more like he wanted intimacy and wanted to know if she wanted it as well. It seemed like such a strange concept, of a man wanting to know if his wife wanted to lay with him. Her mother always said it with disdain, reluctance, like she hadn't wanted to be with her father when he made it known. She swallowed the lump in her throat as her eyes caught the soft, gentle smile. He rose his free hand, cupping it against the lower half of her face so that the pad of his thumb could slide across her bottom lip. His touch made her quiver as she parted her lips ever so slightly. Words had become superfluous to her and all she could do was marvel at him, like she had never laid eyes on him before. "My mother and your uncle will be here any day now." Robb removed his hand from her face, letting his arm return to his side. "Best we rest, we never know if they'll arrive on the morrow." And that was it. He just waltzed himself over to their bed, like he had done nothing. Like he did not make her expect something more than just light touches. She was so frustrated. Cassandra crossed her arms, her frown deep and brows bowed. Robb Stark was an irritating enigma. Stefan. The jousting matches had not finished completely for the day, but would continue the next morning, just right before the melee. The feast, however, was still held within the night as the moon began its reign in full swing. Under the stars and the crescent moon, however, was nothing short of relaxing for him. At the moment, chalice in hand, he was swarmed by the daughters of high and low nobles alike. Some had their parents at their side or just around to back them. Stefan had already lost interest with a whole lot of them. If he heard another girl sing The Bear and the Fair Maiden just to prove to him that they had a voice that would make the maiden weep, he was going to run. Run where? Hell if he knew. He would just run, somewhere, at least. Prince Stefan, he heard a voice say out of the many, I hear you are to be married soon. He had to admire this one's boldness. She was putting all her cards on the table, just practically admitting what she was here for. Have you took her interest already? In truth, he was about to settle. That was the last thing he wanted to do, but his care about a wife at the moment was slim to none. I can't say, he lied sweetly, his smile halfway cracking from how forced it was. There are so many beautiful and talented ladies here. How could I choose so quickly? He could hear giggles and sighs of disappointment from his words. His eyes lazily looked over their heads since he was taller than most of them. He saw Ned Stark looking half dead as he sat with his father and a few of the Reach Lords. Even he looked just about done with this feast, but it was already acknowledged that he didn't want this tourney in his honor in the first place. Stefan. Startled some, he immediately looked around for the source of the voice, but found himself having to look much lower than he had half the night. At his hip was Arya, who looked at the many ladies around him with confusion and lack of interest. Lady Arya. Relieved to see at least one person he liked, he bowed his head to her before looking at the rest of his possible matches. I would like to speak to the Lady Stark in private, please. I will seek the lot of you out when I am finished. His blue eyes watched any woman who looked at her with scorn, and he mentally crossed them out when they did. How could they be jealous over a child? Did they think Stefan at the age of 7 and 10 was going to take interest in a girl of 1 and 10? She was practically the same age as Myrcella. You didn't look too happy. Her observations were correct, which made him wonder if he really used all the muscles in his face to the point of exhaustion. Don't worry, I do the same thing to Rob when he gets swarmed at parties. For the first time, he finally found himself able, actually wanting, to laugh. Thank you, Arya. He thanked her genuinely. I wasn't happy. But you were doing this because you had to, huh? That's the worst thing about growing up. Giving her a half smile, he looked down at her curious and grey eyes. You have to keep on doing things you don't want to. But you're the future king. Arya pointed out in her confusion, you should be able to do anything you want. Placing the chalice in his hand on a nearby table, never to be picked up again, he crossed his arms. That wouldn't make me a good king now, would it? A king has the ability to do everything he wants, sure, but even he is still faces restrictions. That kind of power makes monsters of men. Her nod was slow, showing she was coming to understand what he meant. You'd be a good king, and I don't say that because you're my friend. Smiling, Stefan rose a brow. Then what makes you think I'd be a good king? Because you're kind and you're good with a sword. You help people, which is more than I can say about some people. Her eyes flew to Joffrey, who had been actively avoiding Sansa Stark halfway through the night, he noticed. It seemed that he was still bitter with her about what happened at the Trident, and the poor girl seemed so hurt by it. If Stefan would have stepped in, he was sure it would make it worse. You're after my own heart. He told her playfully, you're going to be a dangerous woman when you're grown. His thick eyebrows scrunched together at that. What makes you say that? Many men will be at your feet either from your hand or just one simple look from you. She still seemed confused, her face contorting even more in her confusion. I'm aware of your dancing lessons. She nearly blanched at that but soon grinned. And you're already a pretty girl. I imagine once older, you'll be prettier than you are now. Her fist came out of nowhere, hitting the lower half of his stomach. Shut up. She told him, all sense of propriety still absent between them. She got even angrier when he started to laugh. Pretty boys always say pretty words. Doesn't mean they always mean them. I don't say things I don't mean, Arya. That I can assure you. And she hit him again, her face as red as the fresh apples in the baskets of fruit on the many tables. Raising his hands in surrender, he surveyed the area again out of curiosity. Sansa was no longer by herself, she was standing before another girl, a bit older than her by the looks of it. "Who is that person speaking to your sister?" he asked Arya, eyes unable to tear away by this person he had never seen before. Arya whipped her head in the direction he was looking in. Squinting some, she then piped up once she knew the answer. "That's Lady Margaery Tyrell." The girl informed him rather quickly. "They called her the Little Rose and some think she looks like my Aunt Lyanna, but my father says that isn't true." Steffon never saw Lyanna Stark for himself. He could only take the woman's own brother word for it, leaving him to assume that Lyanna Stark and Margaery did not resemble one another. The she-wolf of the north was said to be beautiful, so beautiful she made Rhaegar Targaryen whisk her away and made his father mourn her forever after causing an entire war to regain her. No matter what the she-wolf looked or how she was, this little Rose was beautiful in her own right. She did not need to be compared to anyone else. Under these stadium of stars, Margaery Tyrell stood out to him the most. She was of fair skin and with hair that fell in many soft ringlets. Her hair reminded him of the brown leaves that signaled autumn's approach when he traveled to and back from the north. Most of all, there was a presence about her, which was probably why Sansa herself seemed so much in awe of her as well. If he knew Mace Tyrell was hiding her in the gardens of the Reach earlier, then he would have certainly. "Steffon." Arya called his name, trying to break him out of the trance he didn't realize he was in. In efforts to regain his attention, she had punched him in the same spot she had previously, causing him to blink several times and finally tear his eyes away from Margaery. "What was that?" she asked him, borderline concerned and annoyed. "You were looking all doe-eyed just now." Confused, Steffon blinked another several more times as he shifted his gaze to look at the younger Stark girl. He didn't know what to say. He could barely think, his head was all muddled. A proper sentence seemed like an impossible task to him now. Pressing his palm against his forehead with his closed eyes, the Crown Prince found himself laughing, mostly at himself. "I don't know what just happened." Arya looked at him strangely before following his eyes back to Margaery. "Oh. I see now." Raising a brow, she gave him a smirk. "You got all fuzzy-headed for Lady Margaery, that's what." Considering Steffon had bedded many girls that took his interest, he never felt fuzzy-headed as Arya put it. What did that even mean anyway? Was it a northern thing? "I was not fuzzy-headed." He wasn't sure why he was so defensive. Now Arya couldn't believe him, not even for a second. "Right." Rolling her eyes, she looked over to her sister and the Tyrell. "I could tell her to come over." "Don't." Pushing his hand out to express how much he did not want her to do that, Arya seemed a bit taken back with his sudden actions. "I mean." Pinching the bridge of his nose and squeezing his eyes shut, Steffon hardly knew why he so bothered. "Shit, I don't know." He could hear her laughing, making him cringe since it was at his expense. "Oh, this is funny." Of course you would think that was funny. This was embarrassing. Lucky it had been just Arya, he couldn't imagine if anyone else had seen him so uncomposed like that. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Lord Paxter with his daughter Desmara at his side. Next to them was Lord Mace Tyrell, who seemed quite eager in his steps towards him. Steffon's blue eyes met Arya's grey ones. Like she knew what this was about, she seemed eager to make her leave. "Good luck," she told him, "you'll need it." Before he could summon a comeback, she already left, breaking out in a sprint to seal it. Lord Paxter and Mace were standing right before him now, so he couldn't bother giving her chase since yelling would only make him seem improper. "Lord Redwyne, Lord Tyrell." Both lords bowed their heads to him courteously. "Lady Desmara." She gave him a light curtsy, still keeping her head low. He wondered if her neck was sore, she couldn't keep her head down forever. "Crown Prince, I see you've met Lord Paxter's daughter." Mace Tyrell gave the Redwyne a rather sour smile. He still felt a little slighted by Paxter's quick moving, which left Steffon and Desmara oddly between the both of them in their competitive spirits. Looking between the both of them, he kept his gaze on Mace. "Yes, I have." If he complimented her too much, Mace would be offended. If he didn't compliment her at all, Lord Paxter would be offended. They've raised their daughter well. He settled, making Paxter give an arrogant smirk. Have you met mine? Asked Mace, who looked around for Marjorie as he did. He didn't even allow Stefan to answer before he called the girl's name. Margaery. Once he spotted her, he waved his daughter over to stand beside him. To me, girl. Stefan hadn't expected for him to be so eager, and now he had to steel his nerves. She wasn't as short as he thought her to be, she had reached his shoulder once she stood before him. Out of decorum, the little rose dipped into a courtesy and presented him a smile that wasn't as shy but wasn't as ardent either. I wished to meet you sooner, Prince Stefan, but you seemed very busy. I did not wish to overcrowd you. Even her voice was pleasant. Stefan rather liked the sound of it, even going as far as to say it was loveliest thing he heard all day. To show his obvious interest, and because he knew women liked such treatment, he took a precarious hold of her hand and pressed her knuckles to his lips for a chaste kiss. We've met now, and that's more than enough, Lady Margaery. Out of the corner of his eyes, he could see Mace slowly smiling, eyes flashing with approval. Paxter, however, was frowning so deeply that he immediately knew to fix his face before he was noticed. Margaery's hand was the first he kissed tonight, establishing that he favored her out of the many women that he had met. It did not mean he chose her exactly, but Margaery was obviously the most liked. What surprised him most was that she had not blushed or seemed timid by it. In fact, she looked right into his eyes and watched him, smiling still. That told him that more than anything, Margaery was not so easily shaken. Ahem. Lord Paxter cleared his throat, making the two younger teens turn their attention away from each other and towards the Red Wine Lord. Once got what he wanted, Paxter moved Desmara a few inches forward as if to make sure Stefan did not forget her. You could say he felt a little guilty, seeing as Desmara seemed put off by the sudden spotlight. Margaery must have noticed it as well and placed a hand on the girl's arm. Have you met the Lady Sansa, Desmara? She asked her. She is such a pretty girl and so very pleasant. I had an awful time trying to pry myself away from her. You should meet her as well. Raising a brow, he watched Desmara look at Margaery and then towards her father. Paxter was trying his best not to be so heated, and that was when Stefan noticed what exactly Margaery was doing. She was enlisted for Desmara to leave, and because Lord Tyrell was of a higher standing, it was hard for Desmara to necessarily deny her. Whether if it was to help Desmara or allow Margaery time to spend with Stefan by herself, the Crown Prince found himself unable to figure it out. Of course. Desmara muttered, gathering her skirts to make her to the red-headed Stark, who seemed to have won his brother's good graces again. Mace was trying hard not to beam, but did so anyway. Paxter roughly bowed his head. I forgot that I have something to tend to. Another time, my prince. Now he was left with Margaery and Mace, and Stefan was unsure if he just witnessed cunning or not. I have yet to speak with the king. I will be going as well. Mace bowed his head as well and made his leave, leaving him alone with Margaery in the rather quiet corner of the feast. I thought they would never leave. Margaery admitted contently, now I finally have you to myself. Blinking twice in disbelief, Stefan was now fully aware that the little rose of the Reach had thorns of her own. Cassandra. Have you ever heard of a three-eyed raven? A three-eyed raven. Sounded like something in stories that would scare a child. She remembered Stefan used to come back with scary stories to tell her and Joffrey, having her awake at night at the fear of some terrible monster coming to eat her. Joffrey would pretend to be brave, but would go running their mother's bedchambers deep into the night. Their mother scolded Stefan for a week for telling them such stories before he eventually would do it again. No, she finally answered him. Did you dream of one? Bran nodded. I did. Had dreamt of one while I was sleeping. Her hands folded in her lap, atop of the sketchbook she had laying across it with a piece of charcoal at the near corner of it. The only reason why she brought it with her was because Rickon informed her that Bran liked her drawings, especially of the dragon bones she made when she tried to tell Rickon how huge they were in the dungeons of the Red Keep. Cassandra had hoped to draw something for Bran personally. If you tell me the details. She began, unfolding her hands and picking up the charcoal she used to sketch. I'll draw it for you. It might have been borderline dangerous, since it might have not been a good idea for a boy who had just woken from a coma to delve deep into his mind's eye. She also did not want him accidentally thinking of a nightmare he could have had, since what he had gone through was very much traumatic. "Would you?" His eyes lit up, a smile coming across his face. "There isn't much to say about it. It looked like any other raven, but with a third eye." He pointed his skinny finger at the area that was near the end of his forehead, practically touching the beginnings of the bride of his nose. "Right here." Turning to a blank page, Cassandra began her drawing of this three-eyed bird that the boy was unable to forget from his dreams. She was well aware that if the maester knew of this, he would scold her for letting Bran speak of this creature. She heard the old man fuss to the boy about it, but she hadn't heard word for word what he said. Bran looked so disappointed by the end of the discussion, and she didn't want the boy going back into his deep and dark moods. Children were supposed to have such vivid imaginations. She, herself, could remember the crazy, bright worlds her mind used to make when she was young, and how she wished them real. How whenever she played pirates with her brothers that they really imagined a ship and the sea. How their sticks became real swords, perfectly sharp from a fake whetstones they would apply to them. What was wrong with letting a child dream and love their dream? As bizarre as a three-eyed raven sounded, it had Bran so curious and excited. It gave him happiness. As she sketched, watching her hand at work, Bran slightly leaned over at the beginnings of the outline of the bird. She had seen many ravens before because they were such a natural sight in Westeros. They were used to send letters to far and even close places. They also liked to fly, roaming wherever their feathers would take them. The rarest raven other than three-eyed one was a white one, since were sent from the citadel to spread news of the change of seasons. Since Cassandra was a summer child, she never saw a white raven before. "You have to keep this under your pillow," Cassandra told him in a hushed voice, eyes looking towards the door to see if it was still closed. "The maester won't be happy if he knew I was drawing this for you." "Don't worry." He blushed immediately after he noticed how eager he sounded. The boy was desperately trying to reel himself in back to his usual calm. "I won't let Maester Lewin know of this." "Good." They didn't speak of anything else, just letting the sound of charcoal against paper fill the room with noise since their conversation ended. By the time she was finished, Bran held out his hands for her to tear off the page and place it right into his grasp. He turned the page so that it was in the right direction, grasping both ends of the paper so that his eyes could scour the entirety of the drawing. He tore his eyes away from it, his eyes looking right into hers. "This it?" "It looked just like this." Bran turned the drawing towards her. "This is how I saw it in my dreams." Naturally, her own curiosity of what a three-eyed raven seemed to mean started to take its hold on her mind. She would have gone to the library and research, but most of the books and scrolls were burnt to ashes, and her overall fear of the tower still weighed on her. If she approached the maester about it, he would know it came from Bran. There might not be anything about it in Winterfell, since he possibly tried to research it on his own and came back empty-handed. "My uncle will arrive any day now." Tyrion was smart and seemed to know absolutely everything. It wouldn't surprise her if he knew what a three-eyed raven seemed to mean, especially in a dream. He might know if such a thing was real or not. "Which one?" Bran questioned, showing genuine curiosity. "Tyrion," she answered, watching Bran nod rather slowly. "That means you'll be busy and Robb will be as well." That meant he would be lonely. Due to the drastic age difference, Cassandra was sure that Bran wanted someone he could talk to that was a little older. Rickon couldn't comprehend all of what Bran spoke of, which made her feel sorry for him. Placing her hand on the boy's head, she combed through his soft hair with her fingers. "I'll come to see you afterwards and you can tell me more of what you dreamed of. And if my uncle does know anything about the raven, I'll come straight away to tell you." That made him smile, thankfully. A knock was at the door, alerting the both of them. A servant had entered first with Hodder slowly behind him. Cassandra had not gotten used to the friendly giant. She kept asking Robb why the man only knew of his name and never any other word, but Robb always kept telling her that he doesn't know either. Surely, someone around here had to know the answer, and old Nan just scared the wits out of her, despite how harmless Robb and Rickon would said she was. "Lady Cassandra," said the servant, who gave her a small smile, "your uncle, Lord Tyrion, has arrived and waits for you in the Great Hall. He has also requested to see the Lord Bran." Both Bran and Cassandra turned to look at each other, a bit confused by the news. "Well, you don't have to worry about being left, now do you?" Bran gave her a toothy grin as Hodder lifted the boy from the bed and she made her way to the Great Hall. Raya walking at her heels, bearing the same enthusiasm. She tried not to be so eager, but this was the first time she would see anyone in her family in months. The guards that stood at the large doors of the Great Hall slowly opened them upon the sight of her, allowing her to enter to catch the end of the conversation between her lord husband and her lord uncle. "You as well as any men of the Night's Watch is welcome here at Winterfell for as long as you wish to stay, Lord Lannister. The hospitality of Winterfell is yours." He sounded nice, at least as nice as the voice he used that Bran called his lord voice. Her uncle slowly turned to face her, a smile coming across his face. "Ah, sweet niece, I was nearly afraid your husband was keeping me from seeing you." "Nobody can stop me from seeing you, Uncle Tyrion." With a slight bend of her knees, she made herself low enough to kiss his forehead and for him to kiss her cheek. "I see the North has been kind to you." Taking her hand, he rested on the top of hers. "I know it must be hard living in a region you've never known." He was worried for her. She hadn't expected him to think much about her while he was at the wall, gazing out at its beauty or doing and seeing whatever the Night's Watch had done in Castle Black. It was hard not to feel happy that he cared so much. "My lord husband has been more than good to me, uncle. He as well as my good brothers and all the people here have been nothing short as kind and helpful. As they should be." It always amused her just how protective he could get. She could see Robb not looking all too fond of the implications that her uncle made. His eyes then lowered to the Rakhar, and Raya seems quite healthy and happy as well. His hand smoothly stroked the back of the lion, who circled around him playfully, nudging his side with her head. She always liked Tyrion, he was the one who bought her and Silver in the first place. "Where is your good mother? I thought she would arrive with you." She didn't think of that. Cassandra slowly looked to Robb, who looked also troubled by that before gazing at the Maester. Trying to quickly come up where Lady Stark could have gone, she decided tell the best lie she could muster. "She is visiting Lady Arryn at the Vale, uncle. She is worried for her and wishes to make sure she is well. I tried to warn her how distraught the woman was, but that is her little sister and she intends to comfort her as only a sister can." There was no room in her heart to feel guilty. She would let her uncle know the truth when she had him to herself and there were no other ears around. She had to pretend, to behave like she wanted to keep from this suspicion. "Ah, I see." Tyrion took her words, for now or so she hoped. "Lady Arryn does need all her help with her grief." He tried to put it nicely, but the both of them knew how crazed that woman was. She probably became worse once she fled back to the Vale. Hodder soon came, smiling as he walked in, with Bran in his arms. It was an awful sight, seeing Bran's legs dangling like that to show they had no use. "So it is true, the boy lives. I could scarce believe it. You Starks are hard to kill." Cassandra's eyes slightly widened at his jest, knowing very well how those words could be taken as something else. Robb set his jaw at that. Tyrion didn't know, but he possibly fanned the flames of his suspicions with that. "You said you had business with Bran," he reminded Tyrion, wanting him to get to the point. She could see why Robb was put off with Tyrion's sudden interest in Bran too. It halfway surprised her the same. "Hello Bran," her uncle said politely. Cassandra looked to Little Lord, who gave him a nod and a small smile. "Tell me, how is it you happened to fall that day?" He has no memory of that day. The Maester answered for him, despite Bran being very capable of answering the question for himself. Lewyn, however, spoke to her uncle gently and so she could not feel a bit defensive as far as how her uncle was spoken to. Tyrion's eyes lowered in thought, curious. He murmured, warning his niece that he was very much suspicious about that. "I have a gift for you." He then told Bran, his eyes looking to his niece. "Sorry I did not bring anything for you, Cassie, but I thought you might not take an interest of anything at the wall. You being here is the best gift," she told him, causing him to smile. "Do you like to ride, Bran?" Curious, Cassandra looked at Bran to hear his answer. "Yes." He was quite eager with his answer, but his happiness began to wither almost instantly. "I mean I did like to. My lord, the child has lost the use of his legs. He cannot sit a horse. Lewin informed him. Nonsense. Tyrion declared boldly to Lewin, with the right horse and the right saddle, even a cripple can ride. She cringed at the C-word, knowing the boy barely got used to the fact that he would be called that for the remainder of his life. Still, her uncle told things like they were. He did not sugarcoat things, especially when Cassandra desperately wanted him to. I'm not a cripple. His voice, his glossy eyes had wounded her heart. Her eyes narrowed at her uncle, trying to warn him to be nicer, but he simply looked back at her with a clear, "Don't you coddle him." "Then I am not a dwarf." In light of how light-hearted he sounded, she had hoped Robb wasn't offended. "My father will rejoice to hear it." Cassandra snorted inelegantly at that, knowing very well if her uncle suddenly grew at full height that her grandfather might actually like him. It was hard seeing how terribly her grandfather treated her uncle, and there had been nothing she could do about it. She still loved Tywin Lannister, even the parts of him that were sharp and frightening. "Give this to your saddler, he'll provide the rest." With the scroll she hadn't noticed attached to his hip, he handed it over to Bran, who quickly unrolled it and let his eyes dance all over whatever was on it. "The boy cannot use his legs to command the animal, so you must shape the horse to the rider. Start with an unbroken yearling and train it to respond to the reins and to the boy's voice." Cassandra slowly leaned over towards Bran, seeing the drawing for herself. "You see, Bran. That's where I learned to draw so nicely. I didn't know Lord Tyrion could draw." Bran grinned at her before looking back at Tyrion with hopeful eyes. "But will I truly be able to ride?" "You will." Her uncle's voice was unwavering, "And I swear to you, boy, on horseback, you will be as tall as any of them." All tension had left Robb's face, and for a second, Cassandra thought she saw him give a slight smile in Tyrion's direction. "What made you consider helping Bran, Lord Lannister?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Your brother Jon asked it of me. And I have a tender spot in my heart for cripples and bastards and broken things." As always the jester, he placed his hand over his heart with a grin adorning his face. "Now that you have given Bran his gift, might I steal you, uncle?" Cassandra asked him as he briefly looked to Robb to see him nod approvingly. "Thank you, Lord Tyrion." Bran thanked him, still beaming. Tyrion graced him with another smile before walking alongside Cassandra. It was her duty to show him to a room now in the guest apartments, she knew that much. He was her family and her guest, so it was only right that she tend to him. The halls were quiet, like they always were, and only the sounds were of her heels clicking against the floor. Cassandra looked down at her uncle, who was gazing up at her with curious eyes. "What is it, Uncle Tyrion? I didn't think you would settle into this marriage so quickly." Confused by what he meant, she rose an inquisitive brow. "I halfway thought you would have put up a fight and would beg me to take you back south when I arrived." Chuckling, she imagined if her marriage turned out anything like her parents', then his words would most certainly be truth. "I told you Robb has been good to me. I nearly thought you were lying. You can't speak so lowly of him in his presence and among his men." He inclined his head slightly at her, knowing that it would be rude of her to speak recklessly about him, even to her own blood. "I know you to be brazen, but not to that extreme." Cringing, she wondered if her mother was worried about her boldness back at home. Cassandra never knew she was so blunt and rough around the edges until everyone seemed to tell her she was. She was princess. Well, she was one. That was an insult if anything. "Do you love him?" His question didn't surprise her as she thought it would. She merely shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know." She saw no reason to be dishonest. How does one know they are in love? "I thought that was something you women just know." She frowned at that, making her feel twice as inadequate as both as wife and a woman. Were girls supposed to be experts on the subject? Every single girl she had met thus far seemed to know of love more than she did. It was as if they all studied with their scepters about what the feeling was, and she was just too dumb to comprehend the lesson. "Tell me then, how is it that you feel when you are with your Stark mate?" Wrinkling her nose at Stark mate, she shrugged once again. "As of now, I feel happy when we are together." Cassandra didn't expect to feel so flustered with her admittance. Was it because she speaking about this with her uncle, or because her affection for her lord husband? I did give him a hard time before. I was purposely avoiding him and making him feel like I did not wish to be in his company. Now I wish I had more time to spend with him, for he is busy most days. I don't think I'm the proper source to be asking about things such as love. After all, the only woman I have ever loved betrayed me and is somewhere I'll never know. Speaking of, Tisha was bound to get her uncle emotional, almost to the point where he'd be practically begging for wine just to get the woman out of his head. She could strangle this Tisha she never met for what she did to him. Even though Cassandra did not know why the woman chose to hurt him so over some petty coins, she could hold a grudge against her for breaking his heart the way she did. The way she ruined most of him, leaving him drinking and whoring more often than any man should. Thank the seven he did not have any bastards that she knew of. But you know that you love her, and you know that you still do. His lips formed a deep frown at that, making him lowering it some. Don't worry, uncle. I accept that this is a thing that I must learn on my own. That would be best, yes. Cassandra had stopped in the middle of their walk, turning to look over her shoulder to see if they were being followed. What's the matter? He asked, slowly looking around as she did. Is everything all right? There is something I want to speak with you about, and I don't want any ears around. Opening the door for him, she watched her uncle amble his way in before shutting the door once she entered behind him. Pressing her ear to the door, she tried to listen for any sort of footfalls, but all she heard was dead quiet. Standing upright, she turned to face Tyrion. Someone sent a catspaw wielding my father's dagger to kill Bran. Clearing her throat, she wondered if it was wise to tell him how she was almost murdered along with him. Finding it hard to keep that a secret, she spilled the truth much to her reluctance. In the process, they almost killed me. Tyrion's mouth opened in shock, barely soaking in all that she told him. Flabbergasted, he didn't seem as if a proper sentence could leave him. Did they? Hesitantly, he inclined his head, eyes flashes with a warning to tell him the truth. Are you hurt anywhere? Almost immediately, Tyrion went to grab her hands. Did they touch you? No, the Baratheon shook her head. I'm fine. I was saved. They set the library afire to cause a distraction, but they didn't know I was inside. I tried to fight them and they locked me in. I'm more than sure that they didn't really know who I was. Have you figured who could have done this? His grasp on her hands became tighter, his brows furrowed. She didn't like when Tyrion was angry. His mind became a steaming mess, and sometimes the end result was bloody. Not only do Lannisters pay their debts, they kill whoever even looks at their family hard enough. No, I'm afraid not. She answered rather quietly. The Starks immediately thought it to be a Lannister. How could they not? Their hearts have never been warm to us, and we were here when Bran fell. Letting go of her hands, he pinched the bridge of his nose out of frustration. How would one not see it suspicious? A boy who climbs nearly all his life, never falls any other day, suddenly loses his footing in the company of a family not well liked. That's probably why your husband was so wary of me. Can't say I fault him for that. Cassandra almost thought her uncle and husband would be extremely hostile during his stay, and she wasn't sure if she would be able to fix and smooth the relationship. Hopefully, she could get them to understand each other while not betraying either one. Tell a servant to fetch me some wine, Cassie. I can't think sober like this. Ned. You cannot force the boy to fight in the melee. Robert had been itching to sign himself up for it. Without a warhammer, he couldn't find himself able to do it because it was his only weapon of choice. So the next best course of action was for Stefan to join the melee, his father's hammer in tow, and win in the place of his father. It wasn't about Robert wanting his son to succeed, he just wanted to imagine himself back when he was young and strong in his son's place. He's my son. Robert yelled, drunk already from beer instead of wine this time. He damn well do as I want him to. Why did I give my hammer to the boy anyhow? He rather waltz around with that skinny blade at his waist. I've been nothing short of disappointed with him as of late. I saw him as something great once, and now he shows me he truly is his mother's son. When he first learned the boy to be named Stefan, Ned foresaw the boy's future already. If that boy did not surpass his grandfather, then Robert was bound to be disappointed in every way possible. The girl, Cassandra, had been the luckier one. Her name was halfway her own, unlike her brother's. It warmed him to know that Robert kept his promise to his mother, to give his daughter half her name, which he thought would have been Maya's once. Eddard supposed her double luck was that she was a girl and not at all a future ruler. Now she was in the north, married to his son, and he hoped the two were finding the happiness that he and Caitlin shared. He couldn't find himself hoping another union like Cersei and Robert's for the next generation. He figured Robert would know what it was like being compared to your father all your life. Eddard wasn't, but Brandon was, and he had to watch his brother try to be better than their father. He was the next Lord of Winterfell, the rightful one, and he lost his life at the same time their father. Horrible, right next to him. Ned strove to be a good lord, good as Brandon would have been, and better than his father, but the weight of it never seemed to leave him because the guilt of inheriting what was meant for him never left either. Now he had to watch Stefan struggle, just as he watched Brandon once did. Just like Robert himself did once. Unlike the rest of them, Robert stopped caring of superseding his father and became his own person. It could be that Stefan was going to do the same as his father did, and now Robert would know how it felt for a child to branch off on their own too. You told him to find a proper wife and he's doing just that, Robert. He tried to defend him while also trying to calm his best friend Zaya. I hear he and Lady Margaery are quite well taken with each other, or so the people say. Robert lowered the polished horn in his hand, surprised by the news. Lady Margaery. The little Tyrell girl. Ned nodded in reply. I think Renly showed me her once. They try to say the girl looks like Lyanna. He was well aware of that rumor and denied it as quickly as it was told to him. She's as lovely as a dawn, but she ain't half the beauty that Lyanna was. He agreed quietly, seeing that faraway look come across Robert's eyes whenever Lyanna was mentioned. His sister still had a hold on him like no other. Stefan is a good heir and will make an even better king, Millie or no, and you know that. I don't know, Ned. Ever since my girl left, he's been tiptoeing around and suddenly changing. He told me other day he doesn't even care about jousting or tourneys. That boy was never like that. Not once. My memory may be shit at times, but when that boy saw a tourney for the first time, you had to stop him from trying to put on some armor and climbing a horse. I never been more proud at how eager my boy was. He couldn't even count to 10 yet, but he wanted to knock someone off their horse. It was rare to see his best friend speak of the memories of his children. All he ever said about them was what he wanted out of them, not how he felt about them. Robert sat down in his chair, shaking his head in disappointment still. Our children change. They never stay the same, and we have to accept that, for better or for worse. Do you think your father would have thought you to be the king after Aerys? He probably would have prayed to the old gods and then knew that they never put my ass on the throne. He roared with laughter. My father would have put Stannis on that iron seat before me. Sometimes Ned wondered how things would have been if another person sat the Iron Throne. Stannis, he reasoned, wouldn't have allowed himself to be surrounded by Lannisters. Would he have married Cersei? Perhaps. Stannis was much sterner, had a sense of justice, and would have been a king many people didn't want but had no choice but to respect. How would Stefan be as king after his father? Ned had no idea. The boy was perceptive, if anything, he knew things well enough. He was good with a sword, he bested Robb and tied with Jon. He also seemed to have good relations with most of the lords who knew him and did not have the reputation to whore as much as his father. He heard some of the illicit affairs that the boy had with low-born girls around the castle. All of them ended with the boy breaking it off cleanly, and none of them bore him any bastard children. The boy was still so young, so naive in many walks of life. He had never been made a warden either, which might have helped him be more worldly. LLL. It was night, the tourney had been completely over and he no longer had to feel burden about this event being in his name. It was horrible enough that Sir Hugh died in this tourney. Now all his mother would hear was that her son died in the tourney for the Hand, Lord Eddard Stark. Hopefully, the woman could find peace in spite of losing her child. He took out the dagger, the one that Caitlin brought him and Littlefinger informed him was his own. The one that was nearly used to murder his little boy. Littlefinger claimed it was his, won by Tyrion Lannister, through a wager, and somehow sent to slay Bran in his sleep. Before he could thoroughly question why anyone, especially the dwarf Lannister, would want his son dead, he was interrupted by a knock. Enter. He told them, loud enough for them to hear him and not so much yell. Putting the dagger away, he turned to see that it was the Crown Prince that entered the Hand's Tower. The boy had entered the room and shut the door quietly, but his face of a force calm. "Crown Prince, what brings you here? More importantly, why this late into the night?" "There's something I want that you have, Lord Stark." His eyes quickly examined the room, possibly looking for exactly what he came to claim. "It is the tome that Lord Arryn had. I want it." Usually, the boy was so calm and pleasant, manners ever so present, but he seemed almost crazed. That's when he noticed the boy's eyes were red, puffy, like he had shed some tears. His eyes did not hold the look of sadness, however, they were filled with rage like the seas during a storm. "First, tell me what bothers you. You look unwell." He watched the prince walk closer towards him, blocked by the desk between them as he slammed his fist onto the surface, making everything lift into the air for a quick second. Startled by the sudden outburst, Eddard was more unsure what could have gotten into him. Why drove the boy into such anger? "If you don't hand me the tome, Lord Stark, I will rightfully become a kinslayer. So unless you want a bloody slaughter, I suggest you hand me that tome this instant." A kinslayer? He was going to murder a member of his family. For what? Ned was unsure how he could quietly calm the boy without heightening his anger. "Stefan, you can trust me. Tell me what it is that angers you to the point of slaughtering kin." Clenching his jaw, Stefan pushed himself from his desk. "Cassandra was nearly killed by some foolish catspaw. How did the boy come to know this?" He was sure Cassandra wouldn't be as eager to send her brother a letter about her near death. If she loved him, she wouldn't. "I suppose you know this, didn't you? I don't have the right to be angry with you because I know who pushed Bran from the tower." The Warden of the North became still, his eyes widening to complete fullness at the boy's words. "I wanted to get the revenge for myself, for you son, and for all that they had done. I nearly lost Cassie for being so slow." "Who did it, Stefan?" Now Ned was losing all his patience. "Who tried to murder Bran and nearly killed your sister? Who threw my son from the tower?" "I don't know who sent the catspaw," Stefan admitted, his voice slowly losing its fiery edge. "But it was my uncle Jaime who threw him from the tower." Jaime Lannister had thrown Bran from the broken tower. It didn't come as a complete shock, but Ned was riddled with the question as to why much more frequently now. Did Tyrion send the catspaw in order to protect him? It made sense, seeing how close the two were said to be. They would do anything to protect each other. That was how Lannisters were. Killing a child didn't seem so far-fetched, especially after all those years ago when Tywin allowed the Mountain and Amory Lorque to kill Roragae's children so brutally. "Do you know why he threw him from the tower?" Stefan seemed reluctant, as if he didn't want to tell Ned the reason. The boy slowly turned, trembling in his rage. "Because he's been having an affair with my mother. Bran caught them, and in efforts to keep their disgusting affair a secret, he threw your son from the tower. You saw this and you said nothing." Shocked by the news of it all, Ned remembered when he approached Stefan before, about the boy being sick. He had vomited because he caught the sight of his uncle and mother together. "What vengeance did you hope to gain on your own? More than what you can give him." He yelled back, "What are you going to do, Lord Stark? Go tell my father without a shred of evidence. Everything will be based on hearsay. I'm the only one my father will believe because I saw it for myself. I'm her son, why else would I lie on my mother in such a way unless it was the truth?" If Stefan told him he saw it, Robert would believe him instantly, but on what grounds could he punish Cersei and Jaime? They still needed proof. "And what of the tome? What do you need it for? You and I are on the same trail and it has something to do it. I know it can help me get vengeance for Bran and now for Cassandra and myself, as well as Jon Arryn and everyone else that my uncle and mother have murdered and harmed for each other." The boy was so torn, and Ned could not imagine how hard it must have been to find out what his own mother and uncle had done. The people he had known, trusted, had all betrayed him in sort of life-damaging way. He did not hide the secret to protect them, but because he wanted to rectify things on his own. Ned could have loved him for that, but Bran was his son and he had the right to know about who crippled him months ago. "The tome is there." He pointed to the other side of the room, where the book laid atop of an end table. Stefan stormed his way over, opening the book with such force. He immediately flipped the pages, studying them as quickly as his eyes would allow him to. "What is this?" Stefan asked. "What? What does a book about lineages have to do with anything? Grand Maester Malian wrote this book. It was made so that the lineages of Westeros could be properly recorded. I was told that before Jon Arryn died, he had this book in his possession. And from what I've read, nearly 90 years ago, Tyr Lannister and Gowan Baratheon had a boy whose name is forgotten, but he had a full head of black hair. Each time a Baratheon had a child with a woman of golden hair, she bore him a child black of hair. You and your younger siblings have been the only exceptions. Cassandra is one of the many with black of hair. And what of the eyes? Did they have the blue eyes? All of my father's bastards have his eyes as well. Maya, Edric, Gendry, and Barra. All of them have the Baratheon blue, but Cassandra, Joffrey and—" He stopped speaking, standing up with his wide as if he had seen a silhouette in the room. Eddard had looked at the boy, brow raised until he himself had put it all together. Black of hair wasn't the only common trait, it was the blue of eyes. Cassandra and Stefan were the only ones with an actual mixture of the Lannister and Baratheon lineage, but their younger siblings had the look of pure Lannisters, blonde of hair and green of eyes. She gave my uncle 3 children and gave my father 2. The prince stood in his shock. I want to say I can't believe it, but I do. She loves him. She loves my uncle and she would have his children. She did have his children. We could be wrong, Stefan. We don't know the entire truth, this could be them jumping to conclusions, of that he was sure. It all seemed to come together, but they still had to be sure. And how do you think to find that out? What are you going to do? Confront my mother. It was the wiser idea, one that Ned was heavily considering. Stefan could see that he was thinking about doing it too. He instantly threw his arms in exasperation. Are you mad? She would have you killed. You think she would admit such a truth to you of all people? It didn't hurt to try. The Queen already watched him, he had been made aware of that. Since she did not kill him yet, she probably knew that he might find the truth any time soon. He already knew once left for the south that his life was in danger, even more so when he took the role of the Hand. You keep this to yourself and do nothing. You do nothing until we know for a certainty. Closing his eyes, Stefan raked his hands through his golden hair in his frustration. I'm supposed to sit and do nothing after my sister was nearly killed. After I know that it's possible that my own brothers and sister could be my cousins as well. How do you expect me to sit here and do nothing, Lord Stark? Cassandra is not the only one in danger. If anyone finds out Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are bastards, they'll. If you want to protect your siblings and keep yourself from death, you must do nothing for now. Stefan immediately froze upon the mention of protecting them, his stormy eyes were now looking down at the floor as he inwardly seethed. The boy reminded him so much of Robert then, this explosion of anger he had was just like him, but he had kept himself from doing a number of rash things his father would have done in his place. If you act so hastily, you'll only put them in more danger. In some ways, Ned probably had to thank Cersei for giving her firstborn some self-control. Do you know who this dagger belongs to? Now that they were teaming up in this investigation, it was best to know the truth about everything. He took out the dagger he believed belonged to Littlefinger and placed it on the desk for Stefan to see. That's my father's. He answered him simply, shaking his head and shrugging his shoulders as if he didn't see the point of it. Why do you ask? Someone gave this to the assassin to kill Bran. Littlefinger claims it was his and he lost it in a wager to Tyrion Lannister. He said your uncle had bet against Jaime Lannister for it. That's the stupidest lie I ever heard. Stefan scoffed, looking as if he barely able to believe that Baelish had said that. Not only is that dagger more expensive than all his brothels altogether, my uncle Tyrion would never wager against Jaime. Tyrion holds too great a love to ever do that to Jaime. Ned looked down at the dagger, head swirling with a massive wave of confusion. Not only did Littlefinger lie to him, but he lied to Catelyn as well. He had to send her a raven to make sure she did not do anything reckless, like laying a single finger on Tyrion Lannister's head. If Jaime Lannister loved Tyrion as much as it was implied, then he was sure to cause a storm if anything should happen to him. Who knows what more the Lannisters were truly capable of. The end.